Hey, Indian Creek 8th grade students, it's Professor Blazek, and I'm here with part 6 in our video series on World War I, looking at America in the war. Now, the guiding question that I would like you to keep in mind as you watch this video is, how did America's involvement impact the war? Now, toward the end of 1917, there was another revolution that occurred in Russia. Remember, there had already been a revolution in Russia earlier in the year. And in this revolution, the Bolshevik or Communist Party would rise to power. And the Russian government's new leader, Vladimir Lenin, who is pictured there at the right, wished to withdraw from the war in order to focus on improving life within Russia's borders. Now, Lenin and the Bolsheviks would withdraw from the war in December of 1917, which was a major blow to the Allies. Russia would then sign the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with the Central Powers in March of 1918, in which Russia surrendered its claims on Poland and the Ukraine and also gave the lands of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania to Germany. This treaty was detrimental to the Allies for two reasons. First of all, Russia had been an original member of the alliance and had come into the war with the largest military. In addition, Russia's withdrawal meant that Germany would be able to move large amounts of troops out of the east and into the west in France, heightening the German threat to France and Britain on the Western Front of the war. Now, Germany would then use their new reinforcements to launch an attack in France on the Western Front, hoping to overwhelm the Allies and move into Paris. And from March to June in 1918, Germany would push the line a great distance, eventually moving to within 40 miles of Paris. Now, this might not seem like a lot of land, but in the grand scheme of things, remember 40 miles would be a huge amount of territory to cover or lose. Now, this sudden, successful offensive by Germany made it appear that Germany might actually win the war after all. However, American soldiers would see their first war action in June and would fight on the front through July to ultimately turn the Germans back and stop their invasion. Now, a few months later, in September of 1918, over 1 million American troops, who were referred to as doughboys, would join the Allies fighting in the Battle of Argonne Forest in France. This battle would go on for 7 weeks until the Allies would finally break through the German line in November. This would be the main engagement of American forces in the war, and it would see some 26,000 Americans lose their lives. However, Germany incurred an even higher number of losses, including over 55,000 prisoners of war taken by the Allied forces on top of those German soldiers who lost their lives. Their line broken, Germany now faced an Allied invasion on their own lands after having fought the entire Western Front in Belgium and France outside of German borders. Now, following their defeat at the Battle of Argonne Forest, Germany realized they had little chance of victory in the war, again because they now faced battles and destruction in their own lands. On October 4th of 1918, Germany would contact US President Wilson with the request for an armistice, which is an agreement to end fighting. Wilson told the German leader that he would only agree if Germany agreed to all of his terms, which the German leader was hesitant to agree to. Now, during this time, the other Central Powers began to withdraw from the war as well. And the Ottoman Empire would sign an armistice with the Allies on October 30th, while Austria-Hungary would do so on November 3rd. And so at this point, Germany was the only Central Power remaining against the expansive Allied forces. So things were not looking good for Germany at this time. Now, this would expand the unrest in Germany, and on November 9th, the German Kaiser or Emperor was forced to give up his position, and Germany's new leaders would quickly agree to Wilson's armistice terms. Now, the armistice was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, November 11th of 1918. This would bring an end to World War I. And Germany would begin to withdraw its forces immediately, and it would surrender a huge amount of equipment to the Allies under the demands of the armistice. This would lead November 11th to being known as Armistice Day, which has since been changed to Veterans Day. So this is where that national holiday actually began, with the signing of the armistice at the end of World War I. Now, in looking at the aftermath of the war, there were nearly 9 million soldiers who lost their lives in World War I, in addition to millions more civilians. Beyond those killed, some 20 million soldiers were wounded in the war, just adding to the overall bloodshed. Over 50,000 Americans were killed in America's abbreviated involvement in the war as well. And just to give an idea of how destructive World War I was, 13.3% of all French men from the ages of 15 to 49 would die in the war, or about 1 in every 8. And many of the other fighting countries experienced similar destruction of their fighting age male population from World War I, again, just underlining how damaged these nations would be coming out of the fighting. This was a hugely destructive war. Now, this actually brings us to the conclusion of our 6th video, and we will return once more to the guiding question. This series' final video will examine exactly how the world looked to move forward in the wake of the mass loss of life and destruction of this conflict, and hopefully to find peace that would take the world into the future. Until then, this has been Professor Blazek, and I will see you next time.